So my friends, this is a look in the dark, chapter 12, check out, and it's past 7. Danny had raised the point that he didn't think they were going to be shot at any time. He said to Carol, you never thought they would shoot us, did you, Carol? It was a statement, not a question. At one point, Dan, I was pretty sure they would. She caught his shocked expression. Well, look at it this way. You're on the run after breaking out. You've maybe 10 years left, plus whatever they add on. And anything else they proved you did while you're free. You've killed before. They say Sean killed a young soldier on the road between Homer and Newton Stewart a few years back. It could have been him that detonated a bomb that blew up a bridge as a military Land Rover crossed it. 4 British soldiers died and an elderly lady in the car behind was hit on the head by a lump of stone that passed through a windscreen. She died 3 weeks later in hospital. The priest who buried her was furious about that. The IRA apologised and issued a statement warning people not to drive close to police and army patrols. It's hard to imagine that Sean could be responsible for anything like that, Carol. Remember your Uncle Frank? I expect some of his bombs killed civilians. Anyway, the point I'm making is that if they felt that we were any kind of threat to them, well, we'd be 2 corpses lying on the bog by now. And I'll tell you what else, if we'd been working for the security forces, the interrogation would have been pretty nasty before they actually shot us. They would have gathered all the information they could. I'm so relieved just to be alive. Carol, why am I doing this? I'm not much of an investigator, am I? Naive at least, and stupid at worst. If it hadn't been for Theo in London and Sean here, well, it'd have got us both killed. Oh, come on, Dan, don't start down the road of not believing it's worth it. If we died back there, do you think Ricky, Sue and even Theo would have left it at that? We already agreed that this is bigger and more important than any of us, and there is progress. Theo's information led Ricky to a corrupt customs officer, and now we have this. She pointed at the piece of paper upon which Sean's neat hand had written a name and address. Amid the calling curlews, a new sound took the writer's mind elsewhere. The stream had become a pool, and Danny raised his binoculars and looked at a bush behind the pool. Look, Carol, a reed bank, punting. Carol had already found the bird before her husband finished speaking. A handsome male like yourself. Aye, but you're the limit, Danny boy. You take me out for a walk and nearly get me killed dead, and on the way home you want me to go bird watching with you. What next? Count your blessings. You might have been food for the birds by now. Better than waste. Recycling is best. The humour back and forth didn't fool either of them. Carol was pretty sure that the shivers up her back were not just a result of the cooling evening air. Both of them had a strange mixture of emotions, and Carol was shaking and felt she was probably suffering from some kind of delayed reaction to the adrenaline producing events of the day. Inside she was thinking, I'm just a wee frightened girl. As Danny Green watched the noisy reed bunting at the top of the bush, his thoughts returned to the house where they'd been captives. He was still wondering if he would have heard the sound of the bullet. Carol, he paused to get her attention. If we had died back there, are you sure it would have been worth it? Aye, of course. She gave an unhesitating reply as she lowered her binoculars. If we died, most people would have assumed we were working for the army. Our killing would have been condemned on both sides of the Irish Sea, but in a week we would have been just more names on the list of those who've died here. But Ricky and Sue would have pursued the matter, and Stannis would end up where he belongs. I would sooner be dead than see that pig continue to steal the beauty of this planet. Millions died in 2 wars in Europe. You and I say we do not believe in killing, okay, but we're fighters, and it may be that the ecology of this planet is a much bigger problem than anything fought over in those wars. Are you in any doubt? Danny helped her climb over the ditch. No, not for me, but if you had died, my life would have been over anyway. It would have been right that we went together. Much more important though we're alive to fight another day. But if our bodies were lying bruised, battered, and with a hole through our brains on some lonely Donegal bog, well, I wouldn't have died regretting our involvement in the investigation. You're very positive about it, Carol. Would you have coped with seeing me shot? At this point, the reed bunting left off its noisy chatter. Carol put her arms around her husband's neck, kissed him very gently on the mouth, and whispered loudly, If they killed you, Danny, I wouldn't have felt any bullet, for I'd have died the very second you did. Then she started to shake and cry, uncontrollably, in a way that Danny had never seen before. For once in her life, Carol had lost control, and all the stress and shock of the last few hours came out as two people in deepest of love stood alone and alive on the high barren land near the Irish border. Danny felt like time had ceased, as if everything was frozen until Carol allowed it to continue. He too felt the tears rolling down his cheeks, and for 15 minutes they stood there holding each other in a tight grasp, but held mostly by the release of emotional energy. It was Carol that spoke first, having regained her composure. "Come on, Danny boy, get me home. My mother warned me about boys like you that go for walks and lose the car." As they found the way along the road back to their abandoned motor in the gathering gloominess of a twilight bogland, Carol said, "Right, Mr. Green, I want a cup of tea." "Tea? I want something a bit stronger than that. I suppose you're looking to share another drink with Davy Blaney?" "No," he laughed as he opened the car. "I don't mind you drinking Bushmills Irish whiskey from the bottle, but I really think I have to put my foot down about who I let you choose as drinking companions." "The cheek of you! And you having a tea party with the Irish Republican Army?" Danny felt very relieved when the engine started, and as he turned the vehicle around in the road, which was narrow, the western sky was a very red affair, as if a giant hand were going to place a red cloak over the hills for warmth in the coming night. Despite taking one wrong turn on the way home to their accommodation, they were soon there, but nonetheless late for the arranged evening meal. The hosts were not surprised about that, and without comment served up very speedily a very tasty roast meal. After it, Carol said that she would go and take a shower, and Danny, who had never got the drink he had wanted, was delighted when his host invited him into the lounge for a drop of good stuff. The clear white liquid that the two men shared was not vodka, and Danny rightly assumed it was the illegally distilled poaching. Daniel's appreciation for it led to a further glass, and though nothing was said, it was obvious to him that Mr. Sproul knew that his visitors had been checked out. He invited Danny to just call him Mick, and as the two chatted, he made it clear that he knew the Greens had shared a stressful day. "I hope," he said with a very thin smile, "that you both enjoyed your bird watching on the borderland." Danny returned the smile and said he felt that it increased his understanding of the area, and the hen harriers were a treat. Soon Danny was climbing the stairs to his wife, who was already in bed. Mentally and emotionally exhausted but relieved to be alive, the young investigators were soon cuddled up and sleeping soundly. They were surprised when the Teesmaid alarm woke them at 8 o'clock, because usually they were both awake before that. Carol had half a feeling that the day before had been a strange dream, but it was real enough to her husband, and he was already holding the vital slip of paper that the Republican had given him, bearing their helpful name and address. He wanted to get breakfast over and see this man who may help them. Yesterday they'd nearly fallen off the high wire, and the risk of their own existence would be in vain if they could not persist in this avenue of examination. The encounter with the men on the border, and the subsequent examination of themselves by these paramilitaries, may have reminded the Greens how dangerous the high wire can be, but Danny was keen to start walking along it again. So that's chapter 12, my friends. Where will chapter 13 take us? I'll read some of that very soon and post it. Thanks for continuing to examine this story and to think about it. I hope you're all well. I know that in the southern hemisphere it's far too hot, and up here we're grumbling about the damp old cold, and some parts of you have got snow, but I hope you're all feeling very warm inside, my friends, and very happy. All the very best to one and all. Bye bye for now. Bye bye.